why should we be doing strength training, and how much should we be doing? So if we look at the World Health Organization's physical activity guidelines, they are saying that there's two components to activity that we should be looking at. So the first one is aerobic minutes of activity. So on a weekly basis, we should all be trying to achieve 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise. So if you're working at a moderate intensity, you should be a little bit out of breath, but be able to maintain a conversation if you wanted to. Whereas if you're in that vigorous intensity, you should find that you're so out of breath, you would struggle to maintain a conversation. And because you're working harder, you only have to do half the number of minutes than if you're doing moderate. So again, 150 minutes of moderate per week or 75 minutes of vigorous. And a lot of people know that those kind of minute targets are out there, whether they know them specifically or not. But what a lot of people don't know is there's also guidelines on how much muscle strengthening we should do. And so they're saying that we should be doing at least 2 sessions of muscle strengthening per week. But that's actually in the guidelines that's set for 18 to 65-year-olds. And there's another set of guidelines for over 65s. And the minutes of aerobic activity are exactly the same. But they're actually saying that we should be doing 3 sessions of muscle strengthening per week as opposed to 2. And that is almost counter to what a lot of people think. They almost think that because it's quite a strenuous activity, potentially, of lifting weights, it doesn't, and I'll talk through, muscle strengthening doesn't necessarily mean lifting weights, but when you get to a certain point, it probably will do. But most people think that that kind of activity is something you should maybe ease back on as you get a little bit older. We should maybe stick to the safer options, and actually know that all the research is starting to show, and the guidelines are reflecting, that we're going to be losing strength unless we're specifically trying to work on building it. And that loss of strength is going to have some potential impacts on our life that are going to be more negative than positive. And I'll come on to what they are in a second. And then we can start to look at how many people are actually meeting these guidelines right now. So this is a study from the CDC, and it's mainly in the US, but only 24.2% are meeting the guidelines for both the aerobic and the muscle strengthening together. There's another 6.8% that are meeting for just muscle strengthening. But if we combine that sort of 24 and the 6.8 for muscle strengthening, that's only about a third of people are actually doing enough muscle strengthening activity. That's 2/3 of people aren't doing enough. And when you look at what they include as a muscle strengthening activity, I'm a bit dubious about whether you could include some of those, because, as I'll talk about in a second, in order to build muscle strength as an outcome of the way you exercise, you have to do it in a fairly specific way. And they're including activities in there that I don't necessarily think are actually going to build any strength. So that third of people is probably closer to a quarter of people that are actually doing enough muscle strengthening. So yeah, either way, we've got a lot of people who aren't doing enough muscle strengthening. And that is going to have a bit of an impact. So again, I'll talk through that in a second. Just a quick one. Again, want to value time. So this will probably take about an hour. It won't take any longer than that. So trying to limit any distractions. It's going to be a fair amount of theory. We're going to go through some exercises. I'm going to try and keep it a bit interactive. So there'll be a few times I might ask you to just answer in the chat feature, just to kind of help me get an idea of who's in the room and what we're trying to get out of this. Like I said before, there are going to be time for questions right at the end. And I just want to be open from the start. I'm also going to introduce you at the end to an offer for the Stronger for Life course, which is an online course that I'm running. Whether you're interested in that or not, you'll still get something from this webinar, because all the theory and the actionable steps that I give, and if you combine that with a free ebook that you might have seen, if not, you can find that on the Never Told to Lift website, that will be enough to get you started. However, if you want a bit more of a structured and interactive way of going through that with access to myself through group Zoom calls, then you might be interested in the Stronger for Life course, and I'd love to give you an offer at the end for that. But for now, the first thing I'd like you to kind of give me an idea of is I'm going to go through 4 answers, and I'd like you to answer kind of why you're here. So first one is, I know that I benefit from being stronger, but I have no idea where to start. 2, I've lifted weights in the past, but I worry that starting again will flare up an old injury. 3, I've tried following YouTube workouts, but I struggle to keep up or have to skip exercises. Or 4, I have osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, etc., and I'm not sure whether it's safe for me. So it might be a combination of those, but if you just put the number, either kind of 1, 2, 3, or 4, or it might be 1 and 3, just in the chat, I'd love to kind of know from there. And whilst you're doing that, it's worth saying that if you're here as someone who's really familiar with lifting weights, you already know how to put a program together and manipulate the weight and number of reps and sets to get strength or hypertrophy and things like that, and you're here because you're hoping for a few tips on how to get your new personal best or anything like that, then this isn't going to be the webinar for you. This is very much for someone who's at these early stages of wanting to get into strength training and is a bit nervous now whether they've had a gap or whether they're starting afresh. So if you are at the more advanced end, obviously welcome to stay, but it might be that we've got slightly confused with why you're here. But so most people, so where we've got everyone's answering, brilliant. So we've got Louise is number 1. Hi, Louise. And John is number 2, so lifted weights in the past. Alison, number 1 and 4. So yeah, it's often a common combination I see in the clinic as a physio of people who know they need to do it, but are worried about certain conditions. Perfect. So good. So yeah, lots. There's too many to go through. Everyone's there, but yeah, a good mix of people, and I think every number has answered there. So if they are your answers, then yeah, I'm confident that with all this, the advice, I should be able to get a good starting point from this webinar to be able to start lifting weights there. So if you are here, and a lot of people that come and see me often know they want to be stronger, but they've got objections, and these objections just stop them from getting started. So I've come up with 4 of the most common objections that I tend to hear. And I'm going to tell you why those objections don't need to be reasons why you can't start. They're just probably things we have to be careful of, but we can start. And you'll probably find that the thing that you think is an objection is something that improves from that. So I'm going to use some case studies of people that I've worked with who had the same objections and how they've overcome them and the benefits they've seen. So the first one is that I'm too old to get started now. I hear this all the time, and I completely get it as well, because I'm 37, 38 in a couple of weeks, and I've always thought about doing martial arts and never done any martial arts. And there's a stupid part of me that thinks, oh, I've left it too late now. I'll just stick with the running and cycling, and the racket sports that I love to do. But then I just think it's stupid because it's hypocritical, because I'm here telling you that you're not too old to start to lift weights. And I've convinced myself that at 38, I'm too old to get into martial arts. So it's an easy mindset to get into, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm hopefully here to tell you that it's not a reason. Again, it's something that might mean there's more things that we have to adapt around, but certainly not the age itself isn't the reason on its own. And I want to introduce you to Phil, who is someone who sees me in the clinic as physio. So he originally came in pre-COVID, so 2019, at the age of 76. So he came in with arthritic knee, a painful knee that had stopped him doing a lot of the gardening that he wanted to do. And he's an avid gardener, and he's kind of getting frustrated by the fact that the last year he hadn't really done any of the projects that he had planned. So we started to look at his knee. The other important thing to say is actually he didn't do, after school, he said he hadn't done any regular sport at all. So he'd done a bit of sporadic swimming at sort of a few years, bit of tennis a few years, but nothing that he did routinely or regularly. No sport, definitely no gym work. The gardening was his only thing that had any activity there. And started to do a little bit of strengthening around the knee, which increasing the strength is generally something that will calm down the arthritic knee if we get the level right. And then that naturally just evolved into him quite enjoying that and feeling stronger, and he's continued. And as someone himself who weighs 63 kilograms, or give or take a kilogram here or there. He has got to the point where he's been able to deadlift 65 kilograms and squat 60 kilograms. So deadlifting is where you're lifting the bar up from the floor, like he's just done in this photo here. And the squat is he had 60 kilograms on his back. Didn't go quite to a full depth squat, but he still was able to squat down to a box of 20 inches and then stand back up again with more than his body weight on the bar there. And he, again, didn't start till 76. And he's made fantastic progress. His knee is no longer something that stops him from doing the things he likes to do. He's still aware of it. I'm not going to say that he's completely pain-free or symptom-free. But yeah, he's able to do all the garden jobs. He's in control of his knee rather than his knee being in control of him, which he felt like it was before. And so he's 80 now, and he's still continued. I saw him yesterday, and he's still making fantastic progress. So yeah, age is definitely not necessarily the thing that is going to stop you or be a reason you can't start. We just need to probably start a little bit slower than we might have done if you're in your 30s. This kind of links in a little bit with Phil's story. So objection number 2 is I've got a chronic condition. So that might be osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, it could be chronic fatigue, it could be quite a few symptoms related to menopause are reasons that people don't want to get started. And even after menopause, there's things around kind of prolapse-based symptoms or bladder symptoms that make them worry about wanting to start strength training. And again, a lot of the things, so like those bladder-based issues, they found that women who lift heavy weights have less prolapse-based symptoms after menopause than women who were lifting less than 15 kilograms. And again, that kind of thought process of if you're lifting heavy weights, you must be straining more and surely you're going to get more bladder leakage is actually disproved by the fact that the people that lift weights, and they didn't necessarily start there, they gradually built up, but they got to a point where their symptoms were far better than the people that were trying to stay safe and stick to the light weights because that's what they thought the right thing might be to do. But again, I wanted to introduce you to Carol. So Carol is one of the founding members of the Stronger for Life course, and she came in, and you'll see a little video of her at the end. But she had arthritic knee pain as well. So she was reliant on pain relief every day to get through, and she felt like her knee was always going to give way slightly. And that, again, really bothered her. And she started doing the Stronger for Life course, where she put together her own program and started working through the strengthening exercises. And actually within 3 weeks, which is earlier than I was expecting, she said that she was no longer taking any pain relief, despite having come back from a walking holiday at the Lake District. And that sense of giving way, she felt, had improved significantly, and she wasn't really getting that anymore. So again, it was a knee that was holding her back from getting started in the first place, whereas actually it's a getting started that calmed the knee down. And that's often a pattern that I see. Again, we need to be wary of that you don't suddenly jump in too aggressively too soon, because that probably would have flared her knee up. But because she started slowly and gradually and built up, that's where it has a positive effect. And then there's Jan, who, again, she's another founding member of the Stronger for Life course. Amongst some other things, like she did have some discomfort in her back, but one of the big standout things for her was since menopause, her sleep had been massively disrupted, and she can't remember the last time she'd had a solid night's sleep all the way through. And then within 4 weeks of starting the strengthening work, and bear in mind, she was quite active before, she did a lot of yoga, and she found that she played tennis a lot, and again was very active in the garden. It wasn't like she wasn't active. It's the only thing she changed was adding the strength training in. She had just had her first night after 4 weeks where she slept all the way through for 8 hours and felt energized and refreshed, because she's finding that the lack of sleep was causing chronic fatigue based issues. So yeah, it's been someone else who's had another kind of positive effect for something that I hadn't really considered much either, was the sleep side of things, because as a physio I tend to focus more on the pain side of things. But yeah, just to say, there's a few different types of chronic condition there that aren't reasons to stop. They're just things to be careful of and can improve. Then we've got this kind of objection that people think that lifting weights is dangerous. Because again, when you think at lifting weights, often you think of things like the world's strongest man, and you look at them lifting these ridiculously heavy weights, and the thought is, I can't do that because if I even went near there, I would cause myself a knee injury or tendon problem here, or my back might give and I'd end up with back problems. And I'm not going to say that there aren't risks associated with lifting weights, because it's just like anything or any sport or activity. Is like running. If you went about running in the wrong way and you jumped in and did a marathon without any training, you're probably going to pick up an injury. However, if you follow a training program and you gradually get started through a Couch to 5K app, you get to 5K and then you go through a marathon training program, and you're gradually increasing your mileage week by week, giving the body time to adapt to the demands we're giving on it, you tend to find that you can get to that point without any injuries. And someone who's later in life getting into marathon would just have to give a bit more time to be able to get their body to adapt to that. Lifting weights is exactly the same. Lifting weights to start with doesn't even need to incorporate weights. It's more strength training is about building strength, and that could look like body weight first, and I'll come on to what the strength training side of things is later. But I'll come on to the next slide because it says it a bit better. But if you think lifting weights is dangerous, try being weak. Being weak is dangerous. And I think that's a brilliant quote, because the first side of that is we can look into, from a physio point of view, there's a lot of things that if you've got less strength, you tend to have more associated problems with tendon pain, bone density reduces, even arthritic type symptoms in the knees and hips tend to be worse the less strength we have. There's quite a good correlation to loss of strength being a kind of associated factor with more painful symptoms. But if we look a little bit further down the line, and maybe a decade or two down the line, if all of that then really leads to a reduction in balance, that could lead to falls. And because we've got less bone density because if you've lost muscle strength in that time, that process called sarcopenia, you've probably lost some bone density in that time as well, which means that fall is more likely to lead to a fracture. If it does lead to a fracture, particularly in the hip, you're going to need some surgery and a period of hospitalization and recovery afterwards. And because you're not then being active in that time afterwards, the process of sarcopenia accelerates and we're going to lose even more strength. And then it then can lead to more mortality and death. That hospitalization one is people that do have a broken hip over the age of 60. 20% of those people will end up in long-term care within a year and not come back out again, which is quite a worrying statistic. The other thing that can be affected, I've gone the wrong way. Here we go, is sarcopenia. So that loss of muscle strength is often prevalent with the following conditions: so cardiovascular disease, dementia, diabetes, and respiratory disease. Now, it could be a bit of chicken and egg here. Is the loss of muscle strength created the environment for the diseases to start? Is it the diseases being there has created the environment for the sarcopenia to progress more rapidly? It's probably an element of both, but the fact that the loss of muscle strength has been related to that and has been related to all those words in red on the screen right now, if we can increase our muscle strength, which is something we can do something about, we're probably going to improve and reduce the risks of all of those words in red there. So again, the risks of, yes, there could be, if you approach it wrong and you went too aggressive too soon, you put too much weight on the bar without having built up the confidence with the movements first, is a risk associated with that, but we can mitigate those risks. The risk associated with not doing strength training and allowing the loss of strength, that sarcopenia, to really kick in, that is what's really going to cause you some problems later on down the line. And then there's one last kind of objection that I tend to hear a lot of, is that I just don't like going to the gym. And again, I do get that. The gyms can be busy. you've got to leave the house, you've got to potentially battle traffic, find a car parking space. You might get to the gym and it's busy and you can't necessarily get on the equipment that you want to get on. But the big common fear that people tend to say is that they worry about being judged in the gym. They worry about people looking at them. And whilst I can't say much about all the other stuff leading up to that, which you can pick your time of day, and often you can, if you've got the flexibility of going earlier in the day when people are at work, then it's going to be like less queues for equipment, less queues for parking, etc. In terms of the thought of being judged in the gym, often I find that they aren't judging you. They're there too worried about themselves, and they're worried that people are judging them. And it becomes this kind of big cycle that everyone thinks everyone's looking at them. And as a bit of an example, outside of the gym, I've got a 3-year-old, and a couple of years ago when I was taking him to baby sensory type classes, it's really not my natural thing. I'm not kind of big on the singing and sort of dance action type thing. And I used to be a bit quite self-conscious when I first went in. And then I think it was through the second session, I looked around at one point and all the other parents were completely focused on their child and they didn't look up from them once. And I suddenly realized that no one cared anything about what I was doing with my son. And that's quite liberating because it meant that I could really kind of enjoy the moment and enjoy that time with him. But it's the same in the gym. Is quite often you'll get in there and you suddenly realize that no one is paying a blind bit of notice to what you're doing. So I would say don't be worried about the gym. But if you really don't like the gym, it just doesn't have to be done at the gym. This can all be done at home. Initially, you might not need equipment. Sometimes in the early stages where we're building confidence in movements, body weight exercises are fine. You might be at a stage where the body weight is enough to push your muscles to fatigue. And I'll talk about the concept of fatigue in a second. But you're probably going to need some weights at some point. Some people will use rucksacks and bags with bottles of water in. Which is a good starting point. But yeah, you're probably then going to need a little bit of equipment. And it's whether you want to just purchase a few things, which you can do pretty inexpensively. You can get resistance bands and a set of adjustable dumbbells, and you could probably get that all for 30, 40 pounds. And that's then where the benefit of the gym comes in, because you've then got access to a lot more equipment, a lot more options. But yeah, it doesn't have to be done at the gym. And this is Mike. So Mike is someone who, he initially found the Never Toil to Lift ebook in lockdown. And because of lockdown, then he didn't have the choice of a gym. So he is someone who did a lot of fail running in the past, but his knee had started to stop him from doing that. And he's got 4 grandchildren and he's suffering with a bit of wrist pain. And he was worried about picking his granddaughter up in case it exacerbated his wrist. Family walks, he was falling towards the back of the family walks rather than being out leading from the front, which he used to be. But yeah, he started and did this all from home, and he cobbled together some bits of equipment. So I think he already had the little bar at home and a couple of these weight plates, but he managed to get a few more off eBay. And he's progressed to the point now, and he did the ebook and he's part of the Stronger for Life course as well, that he's able to deadlift 115 kilograms. And again, before lockdown, he'd never lifted weights in his life. So he's made a incredible turnaround there. And what's more, and he's back to fell running, and he's back to being able to spend time with his grandchildren. I'll mention the end of his story in a second. I'll quickly look through. So Alison says, I'm 60. I've just started to get into local gym. It's been easier than I thought it'd be. No one is interested in what I'm doing. They're all too busy on their phones. Yeah. Yeah, Louise says too true, Alison. And I will say a little bit about the phone thing. Most people do spend far too long on the phone. But when you are doing workouts, if you are pushing the muscles to fatigue, you generally do want to about 2 minutes before you start your next set on that exercise. So that's often what those people are doing, is filling that time on their phone. But it's a pet hate of mine as well. I'd rather someone else do something else other than the phone. What I tend to do is get people to do another exercise that works a completely different muscle group in that time. And that's something I talk about in the ebook and in the course. Is you could do a leg exercise, and whilst you're finished that set and you're waiting 2 minutes, you could then start an arm exercise. And then when you finish that one and you're waiting 2 minutes, you go back to leg exercise and so forth. But I'll come on to a bit more of that in a second. Good. And this is actually my mum's living room. So that's where she stores her little set. So she's got a mat at the back, and then she's got a set of kettlebells. So it's 2, 4, 6, and 8 there. And in the black bag on the left-hand side is a little set of resistance bands. So again, I think that whole total wouldn't have been much more than, I think it's probably about £40, 30 for the kettlebells, I think, and then probably 10, 15 for the bands with the mat there, all neatly under there. She can quickly pull it out, set everything up, and then put it all back again. Good. So hopefully I've kind of helped convince you that the things that you thought might stop you are actually the reasons you probably should get started. So how do we get stronger? So the first one, and the one that is the first step that's most often overlooked, is this goal planning stage. Unless you really have a kind of clear idea of what you want to achieve by being stronger, you'll probably find that if you've got any short-term motivation after watching this, and particularly being the new year, you kind of want to get stuck in, that will probably wane after a while if you've kind of not really working towards a particular goal and you can't see how your progress is going, because it's the reason that most people kind of fall behind on these New Year's resolutions and not many people make it into February. It's because their only goal is, right, I'm just going to get to the gym, and you get to the gym and then there's not much more of a plan than that. So I talked about finishing off Mike's story there, and Mike is, I said he's got 4 grandchildren, and the best part of his story, he told me, after having kind of worked through the program for a year or so, was once the lockdowns were all relaxed, it was one of his grandson's 4th birthday party, and they had a bouncy castle in the garden, and he was able to get on the bouncy castle with his 4 grandchildren and sort of bounce around with them, get down, wrestle with them, enjoy that time. Neither his wrist or his knee stopped him doing that. But before, he would have not have had the confidence to go on. He'd been watching from the sidelines, feeling frustrated. So it's not just about what he can do; it's about the kind of the relationships around him as well, and what he can do for them. And he's more confident to look after his grandkids now, to allow his daughter to go to work and things like that. So, but his goal, he had a few goals. I talked about fell running. He really wanted to get back to the fell running and the mountain biking. And then he really wanted to be more confident moving with his grandchildren. And every time he thought about it, and because he admits as well that it's still not something to this day that he necessarily looks forward to doing. He just knows it's something he kind of knows he needs to do to have the active retirement that he wants to continue to enjoy, in the same way that no one really wants to kind of invest and save money, but you kind of need to have the money to spend later on. And that's how sometimes you can look at strength training. We need to start to think, what is muscle strength? So muscle strength is the ability from muscle to produce a peak force. So it's the most force that muscle can produce. If we want to build strength, so the peak force that you've got at this particular time, if you want to build strength, we're going to have to push near that top end to get any stronger. In the same way as if you're running and you want to run faster than you can currently run, you're going to have to spend some time running fast, because if you only ever run slowly for longer and longer periods of time, your top end speed isn't probably going to change. And it's the same with muscle strength. So just because you're doing an exercise with weight doesn't necessarily mean you're doing an exercise that's going to build muscle strength. So how do we build muscle strength? You mentioned me earlier. I mentioned earlier that training to fatigue or training to failure. And what that means is, what we need to do is push the muscles in an exercise, when we're working out in an exercise, to the point where they can't do another one, or you'd struggle to do many more. And that means we're just trained to failure or trained to fatigue. So, for example, if I was doing some squats, so I was getting up and down from a chair, holding a kettlebell or holding some dumbbells, and I was aiming to do 15. I got to the 15th and it was a bit of a struggle. And if I could only done 1 or 2 more, then I would have trained to failure or trained very close to failure. So as a result, I will now get stronger in the recovery period afterwards. if I got to 15 and I could have easily done another 5 or 6, and I just stopped at 15 because I hit this arbitrary figure of 15, then I'm not necessarily getting stronger. It's not necessarily a waste of time because any movement's good. But if I've got the prime goal of building strength, reaching 15 with a lot more in left that I could have done means I'm not going to build strength. And if I then do more till I reach fatigue, if you start to reach fatigue after 15 repetitions, you're probably not going to you're not going to build strength at that point. We need to try and reach muscle fatigue or failure within 15 repetitions, which brings me on to kind of this rep ranges. So what I normally get people to do is get confident with the exercises that first, and then we build this kind of the 15 in. So we know that if we hit fatigue within 15 repetitions, we're going to get some muscle strength. However, we can be a lot more efficient with our use of time. So if we actually bring that down, so we increase the weight, bring the number of repetitions it takes us to reach fatigue eventually down closer to the 5 repetitions, we're going to get a lot more strength with a bit of muscle size, that hypertrophy, with a bit of endurance. Whereas if we spend our time hitting fatigue within the 8 to 12 repetitions, you'll build a lot of size, some strength, and a bit of endurance. And if you always spend your time at the 12 to 15 mark, you'll then mainly get endurance with some hypertrophy and a very little bit of strength. So yeah, it's good initially. Build confidence with the movement, build confidence pushing to fatigue with some weight at 15 repetitions. So we're not making any huge jumps up in the weight we use. But then over time, once you're confident with that, I suggest increasing the weight again, try and get maybe down to 12 repetitions. And then once you've got confident with that and you've allowed your body to adapt to that, increase again until you get down to 10. And then again, over a couple more weeks to 8, to 6, and then to 5, and then spend some time down at 5 repetitions for your exercise. And that once you've got to there, you're going to need significantly more weight than you would have done at 15 repetitions, but you're going to get a lot stronger as a result. And that's the important part. But that process, as a bare minimum, I suggest to people is 3 months. For anyone who's got any particular areas that they're worried about flaring up, that could take a lot longer. That could take 4, 5, 6 months. There's no time it has to be done by. It's just knowing that once you've got confident with some pushing to fatigue, we do need to keep pushing that on a little bit and have progression in mind. Because if you stay in your safe zone again, you're what was once pushing to fatigue at 15 repetitions. Once you've done that for a few weeks, you'll probably find that actually, if I thought about it, I could probably have done 5 or 6 more quite easily now. And now, despite doing the exercises with the intention of strength, you're probably not getting any more strength as a result. So I hope that makes sense. And I'll cover a bit in the progression section in a second. But that brings us on to exercise selection. So most people kind of normally start here and they think strength training is all about the exercise that you pick. But actually, the most important part is that training to fatigue. With exercise selection, now that we know that we're going to push to fatigue, we're going to pick some exercises to work on a weekly program. And because we know we need to work on them for sort of 3-4 months plus, in order to get the consistency of working through, we kind of need to do the same exercises each week to be able to see the progress. Because there's no point doing it once and then in the next week we completely change everything, and the next week we completely change anything, and it might be 3 weeks till you come back to the exercise you did on that first week. So by then your body's almost forgotten how to do that one, so you can't really start increasing the weight. So what I tend to say is get people to look at these functional movement patterns, and there's 7 of them here. And so you could do 2 workouts of 4 exercises. So you might do one of the movement patterns twice, or you might bring in what we call an isolation exercise, where you decide to do, for example, a bicep curl would be isolating one muscle rather than a group of muscles, where these functional movement patterns are great because they work groups of muscle at the same time. So you're a bit more efficient with your time in the gym. So I've got a video showing all these in a second, which hopefully works for you all, but I'll be talking through at the same time. But we've got squat, so that's active sitting down and standing up. Hip hinge is where you're bending at the hip and back up again. So classically in the gym, that might be a deadlift. We've got lunge, where you're kind of stepping into you're 1 foot ahead of the other, and you kind of go into that lunge position. Push is you pushing something away from you, or you're pushing yourself away from the floor. Pull is you're pulling something towards you, or you're pulling yourself up. So something like a pull up. Rotation is where you're rotating the body. And gait is carry is where you're carrying a weight whilst walking at the same time, which again replicates a lot of things we might need to do with holding, carrying, shopping, etc. So yeah, let me start the next video. So there is no sound to this one, so I'm just going to talk over it as we go. But for a squat, this is an example of a squat. So I'm doing a dumbbell squat, and I'm just initially might do it safely with a box behind you, so you know you've got the safety net of falling down to the box if you need to, but it gets you to go to consistent depth every time. To progress, I might take the box away and start exploring deeper movements into that. But again, that's another option you could do for a squat exercise. For someone who's a bit more advanced and can do a bit more weight, you can then use a barbell. So this is a barbell back squat. And again, you could put a box behind so that you're going down just to the box, tap, and then come back up. Or like I've done here, I'm just going down as far as I feel comfortable. This is a version of a hip hinge. So my hips are hinging and bending, and then they're extending. So this is a bridge exercise, and then they're lowering back down. So it's a hips bending, hips coming back up. This is a Romanian deadlift. So you'll see from the side in a second, I'm not getting much knee bend at all. This is all coming from my hips, and my back stays straight and my hips extend. Then this is a conventional deadlift. So I'm starting from the floor. So I'll go a bit lower. But again, this is something you can build up to. So it means you can go a bit heavier because you've got the bar you can load up first on the floor without having to kind of maneuver it into position first. But again, this is a bit more advanced. So again, you pick a variation of that hip hinge to start with. Then we've got 3 options of a lunge here. So you might do a split squat where I'm just lowering that back knee to those blocks. I'm only going half depth, and I can progress by taking the blocks away, or you could do this to pillows or books. And then eventually we're going to do it down to the floor. So you're just doing your back knee down to the floor and back up. And you might do it without weights to start, and you can add the weights in. Or you can actually just do it with a weight in one hand, which means you've got to try and control. It's trying to pull you down to the side, so you having to use your abdominals to keep you upright. But again, a few options of a lunge. So you'd only do one of these probably in a workout, but it gives a few options here. This is a form of push. You're pushing the weights away from you in a bench press. The advantage of that, you don't need a huge amount of shoulder mobility to do that. Whereas when you're sat upright, you need to be able to get your shoulder all the way above your head in order to do that. So that sometimes limits people, but that's a shoulder press. And if you're doing it standing, you actually need to control your balance a little bit more and keep your core nice and tight to stop your back wanting to arch as you're pushing up. This is a pull exercise. You're pulling the band towards you. It's called a seated row. This is quite an easy one to start with. If you've only got dumbbells available to you, you have to work in the direction of gravity. So we have to kind of put our body in a position where we can then pull the weight up towards us. So this is called a bent over row. Again, is another option. And the other one is, you might have seen these suspension trainers. This brand's called TRX. And you just pulling your body weight towards you, depending on where your feet are. It depends on how hard it is. This is a pale-off press. If I relax, my arms would go towards where the band is anchored, so my body would rotate. So I'm fighting that rotation. So this is actually an anti-rotation exercise. Whereas the progression of that is I'm going to pull that band all the way around me and then come back. So I'm using my abdominal muscles to create this rotation. So again, it's a movement pattern that's often left out and neglected. And then another option of that, you could put the band slightly higher. So you're having to come down at a diagonal and have a bit of a kind of crunch to the abdominal muscles there. And so they're having to work a bit more. And then you've got these walking options. So again, this replicates carrying the shopping. So you would walk with a weight in both hands. You might just have a weight in one hand. So again, it's trying to pull you down to the side. So you're using your abdominals to stop it falling down. It's a bit like carrying a suitcase. And then this one just a little bit harder again, because we're having to bring the shoulder and have some shoulder stability whilst you're walking, and also having the weight push you down to one side. So again, I've run through those quite quickly there. You'll get the replay of this and you'll be able to see all those. It's not an attractive freeze frame there. You'll get all the video, so you can go through those. But if you get the ebook, or whether you come to the Stronger for Life course, you'll be kind of guided a bit more on how you can slot those into a workout program. But if we go back to those exercises there of picking one variation of each one and putting that in a workout, and then you might pick one of those to do twice, that's a good workout that works everything. And often what happens is people try and do the first variation of a squat that they think of, their knee hurts, so they stop doing it. But there's lots of different variations and ways to adapt a squat. So you can then, rather than leave it out, which is what a lot of people do, and then the one exercise that you probably needed to work on is the one you've now left out and you're working on all the others. The squat is probably the more important, the one we do add in. We just need to find the right start point for you. And that's where, again, ebook can help with that. But you can also type in best squat variations for knee pain into YouTube, and you'll often find something there. If you only had time to do one workout per week, I would focus on those ones in red right now. So the form of squat, so whether that's down to a box, whether that's a squat with dumbbells, or whether you're going to use a barbell, or you can sometimes use some of the equipment in the gym, or you could do a leg press is another version of that. You could do a form of the hip hinge, so whether that's a bridge, the Romanian deadlift, or a deadlift. A push, you could do the bench press maybe, or shoulder press, and then the pull, where you pull with a band. Pull is one that's often neglected because a lot of people only use things with weights, but often you need the bands. Are great because you can anchor it at varying heights, so you're not then limited to gravity, because the only option you've got with a weight is a bent over row, and some people's backs don't like that. So actually sitting and using a band or one of the cable machines is a really nice way of doing that, but people neglect it because they don't necessarily have the bands available, and you can get them pretty cheaply for kind of £6-7 on Amazon. But yeah, if you only had time to do one workout, I would do those. I would tend to do 3 sets of 15 exercises or 15 repetitions initially, where you're just trying to work on get confident first, and that kind of brings me on to the progressions, and I'll talk about the consistency. But yeah, then you're going to then 3 sets of 15 of all the exercises, and you do that maybe once a week, possibly twice a week. But if you're doing twice a week, I'd probably then add in the other movement patterns into your second workout. Consistency, you heard me say there that as a bare minimum to get down to the 5 repetition max, I would work over 3 months, probably going to take a little bit longer. So it's not something you can do for 2 weeks, suddenly get stronger, and you don't need to do this again. This is going to be like a lifestyle change type thing that you need to kind of try and find how to do 2, possibly 3 workouts in a week. They might only be half an hour. It doesn't need to be much longer than that, but it's something you're going to do for the foreseeable future, because the moment we stop and we have long periods where we're not doing it, we allow the sarcopenia, that loss of muscle strength, to come back in again. And then we've got the progression. So again, it's something I keep talking about, and I feel I repeat a lot, but I think it's really important, is there's no rush to go through this progression, but we need to progress. So confidence and movement patterns, make sure you're happy with all the exercises you're doing. Then start to add a bit of weight and make sure you're happy holding weight at the same time. Then make sure you're happy getting close to that fatigue point where you feel the muscles couldn't have done another one if they tried. And that should be because of muscle fatigue, not due to pain or just being out of breath. If they're the pain or out of breath the problem, then there's other ways to adapt around that. Then once you've got used to pushing to fatigue at 15 repetitions, that's where you gradually over the weeks add a bit of weight to try and get that down to 12 repetitions, then 10, then eventually down to 5 repetitions. And again, that's going to take you 3, 4, 5, 6 months to get to that point. There is no rush. But when things do start feeling easy, that's time to make it harder again. Because if it's feeling easy, you're probably not getting stronger anymore. So to recap, it's really important that you create some goals. You really want to know where you are on your journey to reaching that goal. Because if you haven't got a goal in mind, you're likely to lose motivation. So, and keep reevaluating the goals every few months as well, because people forget about that. Is once you realize you've unlocked some potential and you can see what is possible, you start to think of more advanced goals that you could do. And often that kind of the horizon keeps moving and you can see more. So yeah, do think about that, reevaluating the goals later on. You're going to pick your exercises, whether it's those movement patterns or you could use other ones in the gym. The exercises aren't as important. There's some ideas that I gave, but you can feel free to add others in, but try and target the whole of the body if you can. And then once you've got those, you're really going to train to fatigue and progress in that manner I said a second ago, and you're going to stay consistent over time to do that. But really important, again, at that bottom, don't rush. We need to give your body time to adapt, because some of those things that you thought might have been your limitations or your objections to starting in the first place may well flare up a little bit at times, and we need to ease back and adapt and then go again. But if we rush through this, there are definitely going to be things that do limit our progress. So you have to respect the fact that coming into this as an older adult, we can't jump into this like 20-year-olds can, because they don't have to worry about the injuries as much, and they can bounce back a lot quicker, and they haven't got kind of those years behind them. So it's going to be a slower progress, and don't compare yourself to anyone else. Compare yourself to how you were a week ago, a month ago, and just see the progress you're making. So in terms of the theory side of it, that was most of it there. So I'm always interested to know, what was the kind of the most helpful part of that either you didn't know before and you kind of will take away from today? If you put that in there, that'd be great. And then in a second, I'm going to just come on to talk through a bit more about the Stronger for Life course and whether it's something that might be of interest for you. Like I say, if you combine this with the completely free ebook that's downloadable on the Never Too Old to Lift website, you can certainly get started, and there's no need to kind of take any more steps from here. But you might be interested because there's a little bit more support you get with the course. It's also, the ebook's available as a paperback, which you can find on Amazon. Just search Never Too Old to Lift on Amazon, and you should find that there. Got a few people typing here. So Alison says getting down to 5 repetitions. Helen says training to fatigue, needing to up the weight. Perfect. Yeah, and that's a big one. Kim says exactly what Helen and Alison just said. And Dave said that it's not too old to get started. Alison says, kind of thought the more reps you did, the stronger you were. Yeah, it's a common thing, is people tend to feel that, say, once you get to 15 reps and that starts to feel easy, they just start doing more and more and more and more repetitions. But you then tend to just be working better endurance, but not building the strength. And it is a lack of strength and lower strength levels that tend to be associated with all the kind of those words in red that I said earlier, and those diseases and the falls and the hospitalizations, etc. And yeah, also keep the same exercises and not alter all the time, Helen says. So yeah, with that, Helen, because people often ask, once I get to 5 repetitions and I've been there for a few weeks, what should I do? And that's what I do say to people, let's change the program. So I normally say, right, let's pick a load of new exercises for each workout, and then let's start back at 15 repetitions and then build those ones up. And then you can keep cycling. So it doesn't mean the exercises you pick on your first workout you're doing for the foreseeable future for the rest of your life and always working at 5 repetitions. As people get a bit more advanced with this, there's this thing called periodization, where they kind of go up to 5 repetitions and then they start to reduce the weight to work back down towards 15. Or like I tend to do with people, I just completely change the program and then you start again from fresh and go from there. You can add some quicker exercises in, which is quite important as well. It's not just how strong you can get, it's how quickly can you access the strength you've got. And that's not something I jump into things with people straight away. Once you're confident with working with weight, you can then try and work with weight quickly, and there's a few other exercises you can work on there. Denise says, are we training to fatigue on every set? It's generally the research is showing, actually, if you get close to fatigue, you get just as good a result if you're reaching fatigue and you're getting to it without the risk. So normally, if you'll tend to find that you get to fatigue within close to fatigue within 1 or 2 repetitions. If you do it on the first set, you'll be very similar for the second and third. So it doesn't necessarily have to be directly to fatigue. If you were aiming for fatigue and you managed it on the first 2 sets, and on the last one you only managed 10 repetitions, then that's still good. You worked to fatigue there. But if you got to 15 again and it's that same thing, do you feel like you could have done a lot more, then bring it down. So as long as you hit fatigue on 1 set, that's fine. But you're generally going to hit it on most sets if you're hitting it on 1 set. Good. Then I said I'll mention a bit more about the Stronger for Life course. So it's an online course in a community, and it's going to help you plan a strengthening program around your individual needs. So what I wanted to do was create something that, rather than me just kind of give you a one-size-fits-all program and you just follow me on YouTube and do a load of exercises at the pace that I tend to do them, that's not going to work for everybody. And it's a reason that most people find these one-size-fits-all programs don't suit them, because there's always one exercise you can't do, whether it's because of pain or whether you can't move your shoulder enough, or your ability to get on and off the floor might make it a lot slower. And by the time you've got up, the person on the video's almost finished their next exercise. So instead, it's going to be more kind of guiding you more through the theory again and helping you select the exercises that you find that program that is going to meet your needs. And it's because the finding the start point is the hardest bit. So it's going to be how you find that start point to know how to progress from there. And then once you've got that start point, you can progress, build your strength, which is going to build your confidence, and it's going to allow you to look forward to that active future. I kind of broke it down into 3 stages within the course. So you've got this preparatory phase. So it's going to have a lot more in-depth guide to the goal planning process there, because I've said that is a really important part of it. The thing I've added in with the course that's not on the ebook is these baseline tests. So there's going to be certain tests that you can do that I get people to do at the start, at 6 weeks, at 12 weeks, and every 6 weeks. So not only will you see the weights improving and you sort of feel better, you can have these kind of objective scores that you score. And so one of them is how many times can you stand up and sit down in a set time. One of them is how your ability to get on off the floor with using as few points of contact as possible. So not using your arms, or trying not to use your hand and your arms and your knee. Is trying to get to that eventually so you can just get up without using your hands. And there's a scoring system to that. But yeah, seeing those scores improve is really motivating as well. And then in this preparatory phase, while you're working through it, because there's no kind of pace you have to work it through this, you do it in your own time. Whilst you're building your program, I get you started with a bodyweight routine. So we at least get you in the habit of working through a routine and kind of building that routine into your weekly program. Then I give a bit of an introduction into the equipment used. So again, initially you may not need much equipment, but at some point you probably will do. So I kind of guide you through all those equipment that you might find in the gym or that is going to be available to use to find at home. There's a lot more about those important principles of training to fatigue and other terms that you might hear in the gym that, if you know what they mean and why they're so important, it's really going to help you in your workouts. Because if you don't really know why it's so important, that's sometimes a problem with working with a personal trainer. Is they're fantastic whilst you're working with them, but if they never really told you why you were doing the things you're doing, as soon as you stop with a personal trainer, you kind of feel left on your own again. And what I want to do is kind of equip you with all the knowledge you need to be able to kind of make the best decisions for you. And then again, whilst we're in that preparatory phase, if you're happy to buy a resistance band for £6 or £7, there's a little routine that you could be doing alongside the bodyweight routine to help sort of build that kind of just the act of turning up 2-3 times a week whilst you're getting ready to start your program once you've built it. And then we've got that program planning phase. So we're going to have a better look at those movement patterns and the different variations that you might want to choose. And then I'm going to help you input those variations into your workout program. So there's a bit of a template, and it's how you kind of break those up into different the different workouts on each week. So I'll kind of give a bit more guidance on there. And then we've got the performing phase. You get to start your first workout of the program that you've created for yourself. I talked a little bit about documenting. Documenting your workouts is really important, because you'll probably find the weights you use for the different exercises will be progressing at different rates. And if you're trying to remember those in your head, so when you go back to the gym the next time and you can't remember what weight you used the previous time, you then try and one way, oh no, maybe I did more than that. And then you waste time until you eventually get to the weight you should be using. So actually being able to look back and go, oh yeah, that's what I did last time. And there's a little note section you might use and go, this is how many more repetitions I think I could have done. And then that helps you guide your decision on the next one. And also it allows you to look back over several weeks and go, well, actually that week I was lifting that and now I'm lifting 3 times that. And it's, again, really motivating to be able to look back, because we forget where we came from. And then I talk through a bit more about the planning progressions for the future weeks and months, which is included in that part of the course. So once you sign up, you get through to the login page of the software I use called Teachable. And then once you've kind of logged in, you'll get onto the main dashboard. So it's all really kind of easy and obvious where you should go next. So you kind of click the start lesson, and then down the left-hand side, you can see there's all the different lessons. So it's split into 9 different modules. And in each module, there's anywhere between 4 and 9 different lessons, which is each of an individual video. And you might be able to see there that the first video is 48 seconds. The next one's 4 minutes 59. Next one's 5 minutes 22. Then 1 minute 11. And as you come on to the next one, it's 1 minute 10, 4 minutes 2, 2 minutes 23, so forth. So it's already bite-sized chunks that are really easy to go through. So you don't need to kind of watch an hour video at a time, and then next time you wanted to try and find where you were, try and scroll back through. It's quite easy to kind of go back if you want to go and re-watch a lesson. Again, no more than, I think one of the exercises, the video on equipment is a bit longer, about 15-20 minutes, but I give timestamps of what equipment I mention at what time. But otherwise, it's all little bite-sized chunks. As you go through, that green circle on the left-hand side turns to a solid green circle to show that you've completed that one. And if you're in the middle of one, you've got a half green, half white circle. And then once you're in each lesson, you'll kind of see there's a bit of writing, then the video, and then a bit more writing, and then the complete and continue button. So all you do is click the video, and that starts. And yeah, they've all got subtitles as well, so you should be able to see the captions there as you're going through, if the audio is an issue for anyone. And then, yeah, the click can continue, then moves you on to the next one, or at the top, there's a previous lesson, so you can move forwards or backwards quite easily. So the layout's all easy to follow. And as well as getting access to the course, you get access to the private student centre. So it's a Facebook group that is just for people that are part of Stronger for Life or who have been in the past. So it's quite nice. And particularly if you join now, there'll tend to be a group of you start at the same time. So it's almost like a little cohort of you starting at the same time that you kind of get to work at a similar rate. But also all the people that have already been in Stronger for Life, they've been where you are and they can help. So it's a really nice community feel, and everyone's there to help each other, and there's definitely no judgment. It's a very supportive environment, which is nice. I do a live kind of Q&A group call each week with people who are on the Stronger for Life. So it's separate from the live streams I do on YouTube. This is just a Zoom call, so you get to come on and speak to me. And that is every Wednesday morning, but they are all recorded and sent out. So you can always send questions in and then get the recording afterwards if you ever can't make one. But again, they've been really nice, because it's not just the questions. It's some people have used it as a bit of a kind of accountability and sharing what their progress has been and what they're planning to do for next week. And again, they've spurred each other on. So it's been a lot more community feel than I thought. I thought it was people just coming on to ask questions. But what it's good for, if you find there's an exercise you can't do, and you've tried the variations I suggested in the course, and you still can't do that movement pattern, then you can come on, talk me through what your issue was with it. And then I will be able to help you in person in front of it. And you'll probably find others who've got similar problems as well. So we can just problem solve together in those group sessions. You'll get lifetime access to the course, and if there's any updates, you'll go and see the updates as they happen. I do have a bit of an online shop with t-shirts and hoodies and water bottles and mugs, etc. And anyone who's part of the Stronger for Life gets a small discount on those products there. And then the big one is you get a 30-day, no questions, money back guarantee. So if through the course and through trying to help you in those group Q&A sessions, I've not been able to help you find a start point, and you just feel like you've not been able to take any action and you've got no value from any of this, then I don't want to hold on to your money. As long as you kind of send me an email saying you want a refund in the first 30 days, I'll be more than happy to give the money back. I don't want to keep it if I've not been able to help you. But if you've joined for a reason, because you want to get started, I'll do everything in my power to try and get you started. But yeah, if I've not been able to help you, then of course that's there to help you make a decision. That's just a quick screenshot of the group. So yeah, I put all the recordings of the YouTube, the Zoom calls into the Facebook group there, and then there's some chat that goes on in there as well. And then we've got that's one of the Zoom calls as we went through there. So in order to access the course, so for today and for the next week, so up until 11:59 on Tuesday next week, the 16th, I'm offering a £50 discount on the course. So it's 147. So it's nevertoldtolift.com/stronger for life. And I've just put that link in the chat if you're interested. There's got a few other small bonuses as well, which I'll mention in a second. I thought I'd quickly just play a video of what the others have thought of it so far. So again, the 2-minute video.
I was regularly taking anti-inflammatories and paracetamol. The right leg would always have a sensation when I was walking that it was actually going to give way underneath me, but I no longer have those. And I'm just 4 weeks in. I feel stronger, sleeping a lot better than I've ever slept before.
I did my workout on Saturday morning and then spent about sort of 4 or 5 hours in the garden. I would be aware of my back after that time. I'd probably have to do a bit of yoga or something. But back felt absolutely fine. It was really, really good. When I play tennis, my serve's getting better, it's improving, it's getting stronger and faster. And I think that's just due to strength in my arm. That's just all in the first 3 weeks. So really pleased that I can actually see some benefits so quickly, which is great.
I never thought I would go back to the gym, but I am. I'm off to the gym shortly. You can do it from home, you can use a gym. It's so well laid out, it's so easy to follow. The support from you and from the group is amazing. Your questions are answered really quickly. Everyone supports each other and encourages each other.
I've got to say, it's amazing, and it's not too long. You can stop, you know, and come in and out. I'm really impressed, and I've done a lot of these sort of things, and really impressed, Chris. It's amazing.
Last week, I think, was the first time I can remember where I really do feel as I went to sleep and was sort of log-like for 8-9 hours, which was just heaven.
One bit that really impressed me was the Zoom calls where you see other people in the same situation doing the same thing, and that's very encouraging. And it also makes you a little bit accountable. You've got to report your progress kind of thing, and you can also get excellent advice from Chris, who is a qualified physiotherapist. He doesn't tell you any stuff that is likely to injure you. He's very, very careful to make sure that that's not the case.
I'm hooked. I'm hooked. It's great.
Definitely working for me, and I will continue this.
Thank you so much for your Stronger for Life. It's been amazing.
So yeah, just some of the feedback there. I was kind of blown away with that feedback, actually. Not because that's a problem with some of this is sometimes the progress you see can be slower because we're just building confidence and getting into it. But the way that the brain works, sometimes just by going through some of the movement patterns with body weight first and just doing it, the brain learns to use the muscles in the most efficient way already. So the muscle strength we've already got, it learns to use in the most efficient way. So you actually feel stronger quite quickly, despite the fact the muscle probably hasn't got any stronger, because it takes about 12 weeks for that to happen. So the fact that they felt improvements as quick as they did in 3 or 4 weeks, I wasn't necessarily expecting. So it's been really nice to hear that. And like I say, the fact it wasn't just pain, it was sleep and energy levels. Yeah, so that there. But I talked about the other limited or the other bonuses we might get. So the first one is that £50 off the regular price up until next Tuesday. Then the first 10 people to join the course are going to get a free call with myself. So it's a one-to-one Zoom call with myself to help you through that early stage. Because like I said, finding the start point is the toughest bit. And it's a bit that I really want to help people get to grips with. So I've got the capability and the time at the moment that I can give 10 people a call to get through that. So if you're one of the first 10 people to sign up, I will be in touch to organise the call for that. And then as part of the course, you'll get a free sort of digital template and goal planner, which everyone gets. But if you want a physical copy of that to kind of cover the postage and thing, it's not quite £10 anymore, actually. It's about £8. But if you join today or actually tomorrow as well, because there's one tomorrow and it's it's be hard to distinguish who came on which webinar. So if you buy today or tomorrow, I'll send you a copy of that as part of that for free as well. But as a recap there, so for the 147, you're going to get the lifetime access to the course, weekly group Zoom, weekly Zoom Q&A sessions with myself. You'll get access to the Facebook Student Centre, which is again another great area for kind of community to help each other out. You get £50 off the price. You get a discount on the products, the hoodies, etc. And you're going to get that money back guarantee, which is the most important part there. So if you're interested in that, again, it's just near the bottom of the chat there. I've put the link there, or it's nevertoooldtolift.com/stronger for life. And you can sign up there. And that's everything I had on the webinar. So said questions, there's been a few as we've gone through, but I'm happy to ask any questions, whether that's on the theory of what we talked about before, whether it's on the course. So I'll stay as long as you've got questions for me. So ask what's bad for our low back pain sufferers, us low back pain sufferers. I worry about the pressure of my low back with the higher weights. So yeah, hi Gavin. It's that similar thing of, if you suddenly go and load a bar up with too much weight, then you'll probably find your back may flare up. But if we start to gradually build it up slowly, your back will adapt and will start to get used to the very gradual increase in demands we put on it, and you'll create a robust, resilient back. What tends to happen is we get nervous of our back, so we do less and less around our back, and our back deconditions, and it becomes less and less tolerant of things that we do, until eventually you might have to move house or help move a sofa or something like that, and suddenly that load is more than you've ever done in the last sort of few months, few years, and that's where backs tend to flare up, and what I see in the clinic. So the more strength we can build around it, the better. However, if you find that even just doing a bodyweight squat is flaring at your back, there might be other ways we can do it. So whether there might be a leg press in the gym or things like that, but generally squats are going to be good. It's just what you can tolerate at the start to find your start point to be able to progress from. But I'm confident that you'll find you'll feel more and more confident in your back with squats, with the deadlifts, and all the things that you're scared of, were potentially scared of doing. Got Denise, thank you, says excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Denise. Dave, I was fitted with a new hip yesterday. One of the caveats is no extreme movement, squats being one of them. Again, don't know your individual circumstances there, Dave, but generally when I see people as a physiotherapist with a rehab after doing the hips, they're fine to do squats, but not in the initial stages. Particularly, you don't want to go beyond 90 degrees. So particularly with weight, that's going to suddenly force you into that. So some squats to build the strength around the hip are going to be fine. I imagine you're going to have some physio in the follow-up with your hips. So I'll be guided by them as you're going through. But I would say squats are going to be important afterwards, but it's more the depth of the squat. So when you say extreme movements, I wouldn't do any kind of extreme squats beyond 90 degrees. I would just kind of go to the height of a chair maybe, and then gradually build it from there. Jill, excellent webinar. I really enjoyed it. Feel more confident about knowing how to load and for the periodization. Thanks, Jill. I appreciate your words there. Kim says, thank you, Chris. Interesting. Still fine weight training, bloody boring, but I know it's got to be done. And yeah, it is one of those things that it's not always the most interesting thing to do in there, but sometimes seeing the progress you make is the really interesting bit and the really inspiring bit. And when you start to see the differences it's making in your life, and the more and more things that open up to you because you've got the strength to do them, it makes it all worthwhile. But like I say, it is a little bit like the saving money and investing as you're going through. Dave says yes to physio. So yeah, glad you've got that in place. And yeah, definitely speak to the physios about some of this stuff. Joan, I've had a prolapse bladder repaired, so I can only lift weights when it's sitting down. When seated, or can the exercises be adapted? So yeah, a lot of the upper body ones and the trunk ones particularly, you can do while sitting down. The leg ones, it might be that you're probably going to need access to a gym for a lot of them, because you have the fixed machines like the knee extension where you sat down and you're kicking the leg up and then pulling back down again. there might be, I think the bridge one is like a hip hinge, so you can do that, which is not necessarily sitting down, but it's laying down. But a lot of them will be able to be adapted for that. But again, difficult to know the chat here quickly to be able to know your individual circumstances with that, but I hope that helps. And Denise says not as boring as housework. Yeah. I think John and Kim are both typing there. Brilliant. And like I said, the course is one option, the ebook is another, or if you want a paperback copy of that, that's something you can go there. But generally, take some of this, whether it's my program or someone else's program, is use some of the things you learned about adapting and the progression there. And if there's any questions, then do let me know. But just say if there's any more questions, please feel free to ask them now. But again, if you suddenly think of one later on, my email is chris@nevertooldtolift.com. So that's chris@nevertooldtolift.com. More than happy for you to get in touch, and I will do my best at getting back to you as quick as I can. And yeah, more work about housework being more boring with weight training. Where do you get the paper copy of the ebook? So if you just go to, it's all on Amazon. So if you go to, just search Never Too Old to Lift on Amazon, you should see the book pop up there. Brilliant. So I think that is everything. We've got John and Alison are both typing at the moment. So John, I've got reasonable knowledge of how to strength train as well as a quick gym in my garage, but I have an issue with aggravating previous injuries, particularly my left shoulder. I live in Dudley, so may pop into clinic over the next few weeks for an assessment if possible. Yeah, absolutely fine. That'd be, I'd love to help you out there, John. So it's christileyphysiotherapy.com, and you can book something in there. You can either book straight in for initial assessment, or I offer a 20-minute discovery visit where you can come in, have a quick chat completely free of charge, work out if CME is something I can help with, and then we can book in for treatment after that. But if you feel confident you want to go straight in with something, then we can book something there. And just see Alison type in there. Alison, thank you. This has been really helpful. We'll think about the course. Yeah, great. If you've got any questions about the course, Alison, please do let me know and send me an email. Like I said, that offer is available right up until the end of Tuesday next week. The course is all still available after that if you do want it at any point. It's just back at the 197 rather than the 147. Good. So with that, I'll leave you there. But yeah, if you want, John, you can send me an email as well, chris@nevertooldtolift.com, and I can talk more about seeing me in the physio clinic. Good. Well, again, thank you for joining, and thank you for staying right to the end, and appreciate your input in the chat. Really makes a difference. And I hope you enjoy your newfound kind of inspiration to start strength training.